Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
So here's something funny. We just did an answer forum for you all.
An hour long.
An hour long. And as it was saving and compiling, somehow the recorder just spazzed. We actually lost the whole thing.
Yeah.
An hour of going through your questions, which we printed off. But what we're going to do now is we're going to try to do a little more efficient version of it.
Super fast version.
Because we just did it, you know. But I want to do justice to everyone. So real quickly, Kirsten thanks us for the newsletter. It was a big project for us. We're really glad we did it. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. The newsletter, we're so glad. I wanted a way for us to be able to reach out to all of you, and finally we have that. So if you haven't seen the newsletter yet, check your inbox, because it's October 24th, and you should have 2 sitting in your inbox, and there was 1 special announcement that we sent out about the Jimmy Church show. So we will use it primarily for newsletters, but once in a while we'll do a special announcement. And if you want to unsubscribe, go ahead. It's at the very bottom. We won't unsubscribe you from your membership, of course, but we want you to be happy, and we want this to be something that you enjoy. And we did this because of Dean and several other members who were saying, I'd rather have it come to my inbox than have to go to the site and find everything. So
and I would say don't unsubscribe anyway. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, hopefully you don't, because I think it's a fun way. You'll be able to stay up to date with everything. I've got all of his upcoming events, new releases for books, everything is there.
Yeah.
So, and if you have any suggestions, go to the Contact Us tab, because as you guys know, that email is just for you, so don't give it away.
This lady did a lot of work on the newsletter. She put the whole thing together. It's beautiful, and I'm kind of amazed that you got the whole thing done.
I really, really wanted that for members, so I hope you guys like it.
Yeah. So glad we're doing that. I'm really glad. So this is from Satchar. I think he's a new member. He just asks really about Phil Schneider. Wants to know, it was a documentary on YouTube that I appear on, as well as my colleague, Dr. Richard Souter, actually appears in this too. It was done by a fellow named Darcy Weir. And he wants to know what I think about Phil Schneider. Schneider, if you don't know, there's one YouTube video of him that's out there, I believe, and he talks about in the 1990s being involved in underground bases, deep underground military bases, and actually having a kind of war. I'm about to sneeze. Pardon
me. Bless
you. I will cut that out.
Bless you. Okay. Sneeze break.
Just cut that out. Schneider talked about being involved in actually in a battle with underground extraterrestrials. It's kind of a crazy story, you would think. But the fact was, Schneider was murdered in the late 1990s. And in fact, this documentary shows dead with a, and it's actually legit. He was able to get these from Schneider's widow. So the question,
isn't that the same story with Mark Richards? That whole thing going on, isn't that like an underground alien base?
It's the same variation. I mean, or a different variation of the same story. Mark Richards' story. I wasn't going to get into that. It's probably, I mean, I would say almost definitely Kevin Moore's done research on this and has really shown that Mark Richards was not involved in a shootout. Mark Richards, an alien shootout anyway. He was a sordid killer. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But the Phil Schneider story, I'm inclined to believe most of Schneider. I have reasons to be doubtful of some of his evidence, to be perfectly honest. Don't know how much of that I should get into at this time. Very, very quickly, I'll just say, when he was giving lectures in the 90s, Schneider would pass out certain letters from his family as legit. And apparently his father had been in the German intelligence. Oscar Schneider brought over to the U.S. These letters that Schneider showed correspondence of his father corresponding with General Nathan Twining, Edward Condon, back in the 1950s. I found them suspicious for a number of reasons. Maybe I'll do a further analysis of it at some point. But even that aside, I don't think Schneider committed suicide. I think he was murdered, and it does make me wonder what was going on with that. I think I'll just leave it at that. This is a letter from Eric. Eric is from Rochester area. I just wanted to point out to Eric, first of all, welcome to our site. But if you want to get involved in some of the local UFO meetings that we have here, and I'd be happy to meet with you personally, come to the Rochester area UFO meetup group. I've talked about them a number of times. It's a fantastic group. A lot of the meetup members are members of this site.
Yeah.
It's run by Cookie Stringfellow, who's a member of our site here. I've known Cookie for a long time, and she has run the meetups since we started in 2008. We've been going for 10 years, and it's another of my families, honestly.
And our number one member, Lou.
Lou is a meetup member, and he was the first member of this website.
Kit's also in there. Kit has wonderful contributions in the site as well. So,
Yeah.
It's a great group.
Quite a few. So it's the second Wednesday of every month. Look it up on the web, Rochester area UFO meetup, and you can go there. You've got to send in an RSVP, but it's easy. Just do that and attend. They're up in Irondequoit. If you're in the area, you know where that is, at the library there. But go look it up on the web. So we'll leave it at that. So this is from Carolyn, who's a longtime member of our site, asking if I've seen the documentary by Richard D. Hall called UFOs and NATO, The Human Mutilation Coverup. Haven't seen it. Definitely know Richard D. Hall's work. I have a lot of respect for him. He's a UK researcher and very, very good. I'd like to. Have you ever get into the human mutilation thing?
Not at all. Not anything beyond what we're reading with Paulides.
Yeah, and well, she mentions at the end of her note that it reminds her of some of David Paulides' 411 research, which, yes. Long story short, there are cases, we know about animal mutilations, there are some cases of human mutilations, and the question is, who's doing them? There are reasons to wonder that there may be something bizarre there. I'll just mention my colleague Don Ecker, former LAPD cop, looked into this decades ago, and used some of his police connections to look into the human mutilation phenomenon, and told me, he said he was stopped dead in his tracks in a friendly way by one of his colleagues. He said, look, you do not want to get into this. This is not a good career move. Just stay away. He was basically warned off in a friendly way. I think there's something to it, and I will look for that. Richard D. Hall, UFOs and NATO, the Human Mutilation Cover-Up. Wow. She gives a link here. I assume you can just Google it, guys. This is from Linda, who actually, I really like her question. It's all about Dr. Carol Rosin and her talk. This has been out there for many, many years, of a predicted alien invasion. I'll just give the backstory here. Carol Rosin, if you've ever watched Stephen Greer's 2001 disclosure hearing, the big one that really got this whole thing started at the National Press Club, Carol Rosin was there. She had this big shock of white silver hair. She still has it. She looks exactly the same after all these years. And I know Carol, and I like her. I've really come to respect Carol. She's a very thoughtful person. The story that she relates here has to do with the fact that she was, back in the 70s, a private secretary to Wernher von Braun, the famous rocket scientist who made the Apollo missions so successful. And he was a paperclip scientist brought over from the Germans, of course. And
he was also, unbeknownst to most people, one of the original people that sort of began the story of remote viewing. Russell Targ had an ESP machine that he developed and was sort of touting, and Wernher von Braun found him, and they began discussions that began the whole chain of events that brought forth remote viewing.
I never knew this until you discovered that.
Yeah, and I also didn't know he had a psychic grandmother and psychics in the family. So this was something that he was deeply, personally interested in.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. That's pre-Ingo Swann, etc. So.
Well, I just want to deal with her question here. So
yes,
with Carol, Carol said that von Braun died, I think, in 1977, around then. In his last years or so, he was not well. But apparently he told Carol, he says, listen, the military is really lies all the time. And right now they lie about the communist threat. They're going to lie about the impending terrorist threat. Then they're going to lie about threats from outer space, like asteroids, and then aliens, extraterrestrials. All of this is a way to justify their own power, their own situation. And she said this many times. So basically, that's been interpreted as a kind of Project Bluebeam sort of scenario, the fake alien invasion used to justify the imposition of a kind of global fascist state. I think many people are familiar with this. I've talked about it lots over the years. My take on it is this. I believe that this conversation probably did happen. So I believe Von Braun probably did tell something like this to Carol. However he told it, though, and what exactly it means, though, is the real question. So, was Werner von Braun briefed? Did he talk to some high-level official who said, this is our plan? First, we're going to lie about the commies, and then we're going to lie about the terrorists, then we're going to lie about the asteroids, then we're going to lie about ETs. Well, I doubt it, probably. I doubt that. The fact is, it's not really a great revelation to know that the U.S. military will exaggerate the communist threat or exaggerate the terrorist threat. Any guy off the street, any person off the street could have told her that. You don't need Werner von Braun to say that. The asteroid thing, that really hasn't happened in a significant way, and the ET thing hasn't happened at all. Like, they haven't said, wow, the aliens are coming, duck, we'll save you. It's been 40 years. Was this an actual plan, or was this just von Braun's opinion? I mean, it could have just been von Braun spitballing, for all I know. I don't really know the context, so it's hard for me to know. Now, one thing I would just say is, as disclosure inches forward, it is inching forward. I think it is. You have to ask yourself, what will the national security apparatus do about this reality, and will they promote it in just enough of a way to frighten the public into running to them for protection? Like, I could see that.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. But in terms of an imminent alien invasion, I've just never been persuaded, frankly, that they're going to go down that road. So I think a false flag alien invasion is a hell of an undertaking. And I can tell you, I would not want to be the person in charge of orchestrating that. That's a nightmare logistically, it seems to me. So that's my take on that.
From our perspective, I mean, who knows? With their technology being so far ahead, who knows what that would actually look like from their perspective?
But you've got a whole world of not just skeptical scientists, but like truly hostile scientists to this whole idea. I mean, how are you going to like convince all of them? Oh yeah, the aliens are here. Like, they're just not going to run around in circles pulling their hair out of their head. They're going to want to see evidence. They're going to want to see data. And if we don't give that to them, there will be definitely pushback.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'm only saying I think we cannot really imagine the level of advances they might have and what they might be able to do. That's all I'm saying.
They are the breakaway civilization. And indeed, they very well could have the ability to pull one over on us. So
I just think we don't even know the half of it.
Fair enough. By the way, Linda says here, you both make a brilliant team and come across as lovely people with a great sense of humor. That's a lie. As well as, thank you very much.
That's why we dress like sprockets tonight.
Yeah, what happened there? That was an accident.
We didn't realize, if you were here, we look different. These are different. They don't look like that on camera.
We are really, so anyways, that was goofy.
But no, seriously, thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. We appreciate that. So this is from a member. I don't want to mention this person's name. He's a great guy. He's written to us a number of times, and we really like him. And he doesn't live in this country, so that's as much as we'll say.
This is the benefit of doing this 2 times, because we did make that mistake in the last one. Go.
Yeah. So he writes, and I'm mentioning this because I think it's of general interest, so that's why I want to. He says, when I was about 9 years old, I had a very vivid experience with, retrospectively, I now understand, is a pretty standard MIB episode, Men in Black. This was followed by a number of weird events which I was unable to share with anyone. So again, like a lot of you guys who are members, weirdness in his life, experiences, and I think this is why we gravitate to each other. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he goes on. He says, now I'm getting a little older. I won't mention his age out of deference. He says that I've had time to research these things, and he says, I feel that there's something more that's probably happened. There's more than I can recall. Mm. He has a very good friend, an intuitive individual who says that he's being blocked. He doesn't quite know what that means. So he's thinking, he went through one I think it seems like he went through a regression, but he seems to argue that he's very resistant to hypnotic regression.
Yeah.
And doesn't really know what to do. So I guess, aside from the fact that I'm not a medical professional, and we are not medical professionals, I'll just say, as in my own non-medical professional way, that I think hypnosis can be very helpful.
Sorry, I was just looking.
And all hypnosis is, as far as I've been able
agree.
to understand, it's a form of relaxing you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a form of mental relaxation so that you can remember things a little bit better than before, maybe a lot better. And if it doesn't work the first time, it doesn't mean it won't work the second or third or fourth time. And I would say, don't give up if you want to do this. I mean, hypnosis will stir things up, and you've got to be prepared for that. But it might be something that you want to just give another try. And I think you want to say something about this.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say something different than what I said the first time, actually. I think, basically we're looking at changing brain states with hypnosis. So, we're operating in beta right now. Alpha is a more relaxed state. And I think hypnosis inductions are essentially doing that. They are taking you to a relaxed state, but you are changing brain states. And sometimes if you're a super skeptic, or you are really nervous or really worried, or you've already built up this whole story in your head, those can be blocks to allowing that deeper mental state to emerge so that you can recall these things. I have used hypnosis many times for many different things. Some of them have nothing to do with this. And really, I always have maintained a state of being connected to myself. I think we are all in that place where we're not sure if hypnosis is 100%. We're not sure, perhaps when we get super relaxed, our minds can make up stuff. That is a possibility. And that's why, for me, with my own regression, I've kept it on the side and I'm thinking about it. I'm processing the whole thing. So when I did mine, I just did one recently, as I was saying, with Barbara Lamb, and it was a conscious interaction that happened. So I had a witness with me. I know a lot of you have heard me say this. We were sitting on a couch together, and we consciously recall this being appearing and disappearing in front of us. But we both felt that there was a time missing, So I did do hypnosis for this, and I was concerned before I did it. I was very worried about all these things, my mind making up things. I don't want that. I want the pure event, or I don't want it. But something interesting happened. As the induction went on, it went deeper and deeper. She just was relaxing me. And in the beginning, I was still thinking, oh my God, this might not work. But there was this switch that happened after a while where all of a sudden they were brilliant questions she was asking me, because it was really just getting me to go deeper. She was not leading me in any way, because I was, very aware of that. I don't want to be led. But all of a sudden, at a certain point, I started to recall the couch, the exact colors, and in fact the pattern that was on the couch just came in super vivid. And then this whole thing just started rolling out. And so I do think it's possible. I personally think you might want to pursue it. And I don't know if you're into this, but one thing I can recommend that happens is relaxation tapes. Well, not tapes anymore, MP3s, whatever. Relaxation exercises prior, trying to get yourself in this more relaxed state. Not even just prior, but just leading up to it, days leading up to it. I think you should continue and pursue it. And it will be up to you when you get the information, what you do with it. Like Richard said, you may not want to pursue it if you really think about it. But for me, I definitely want to. And I think hypnosis really is one of the best ways to do it at this point.
Probably, yeah. I don't know what else is going to be able to get you into that state of mind to do the kind of recall. So It's up to you.
Definitely good referrals, super reputable people. If you're in the U.S., I would say stick to the main people. If you're not in the U.S., you'd have to find people in your area that are very, very well respected. That's all.
Okay, so next question is from Scott Santa. I'll just mention his name. Scott, I've known forever. Scott just wants to know what's my opinion on the Allende letters and the Varro edition of Morris K. Jessup's The Case for the UFOs. Good question. And when we did this the first go round, when we lost the video, I pulled out this book from the shelf. This is my book, my first book, UFOs and the National Security State, first volume, Chronology of a Coverup, covering the 40s to the 70s. And I'll just mention, I had to really go through this because I could not remember all the details myself. That's the truth. But I'm going to read a little bit out of this here from my section called The Strange Case of Morris Jessup. I got it right here. One thing I'll say, Jessup was a smart guy. He was a very good UFO researcher and writer in the 1950s. And in 1955, he wrote this book called The Case for the UFO. What was interesting, I'm just going to read a little part from my book here because it's actually better than what I could recount. Shortly after the publication, a paperback edition of the book was sent anonymously to the chief of the Office of Naval Research in Washington, D.C. And that book was filled with all these annotations, very strange annotations, all throughout the margins of the book. They appeared to reflect a detailed knowledge of UFOs. There were 3 distinct personalities in the annotations. So it was like someone had passed the book around, or people were passing it around, and each with their own take on the UFO subject, but all using very, I'm going to read some of their vocabulary in a minute, but very arcane language. Anyway, later that year, the Office of Naval Research republished the book with those annotations. And it was published by a corporation known as the Varro Corporation in the town of Garland, Texas. So that's the Varro edition of the book. And in fact, if you hunt around, I believe a PDF version of that book does exist. You can probably, if you've got some gnarly skills, you might be able to download a PDF version of that. Here's the thing: the
skills.
People, the people at the Office of Naval Research someone was impressed by these annotations, because they wrote a whole introduction to it, basically saying this is pretty interesting. The authors of the annotation seem to know, they seem to have an intimate knowledge of UFOs. And indeed, I'm going to read this here. The ONR introduction stated that the following terms were used in the annotation. I'm just going to read you some of them: mothership, home ship, dead ship, great arc, great bombardment, great return, great war, little men, force fields, deep freezes, undersea building, measure markers, scout ships, magnetic and gravity fields, sheets of diamond, cosmic rays, force cutters, undersea explorers, inlay work, clear talk, telepathing, burning, coat in quotes, nodes, vortices, magnetic net, and many others were used very naturally by these people.
Can I see that? What was the clear one?
Clear talk.
Clear talk.
Right before telepathing.
Interesting.
So what ended up happening after that, Jessup found himself getting a couple letters of correspondence from an anonymous person who seemed to write in very much the style of the notations, at least in his opinion. And then Jessup died of what appeared to be a suicide in 1959, asphyxiation. I think it was in his car. He had a tube attached to his exhaust and went into the car, and he died. Common way people could kill themselves. This is what I wanted to read here. So in the before Jessup died, he yeah, he had been in correspondence with the author of the Varro Notes, who I wrote here is now generally believed to be a man named Carl Allen, alias Carlos Allende or Allende. And the fact was that in 1969, this is a decade after Jessup died, Allende apparently confessed to James and Coral Lorenzen. They were two leading UFO researchers of that time. And he says, yeah, I wrote the Varro notes, and I wrote the letter to Jessup. And then he said, no, actually, I did. Like, he recanted his confession. So the thing is, like, his mother apparently said he's a leg puller, like a practical joker, and one of his brothers described him as a drifter. So I don't know what Allende's deal was. What is true is that those letters were able, the annotated edition, by the way, of the Varro edition, was enough to get the ONR's attention. And maybe he was just really, really good at faking detailed knowledge of the alien situation. The other thing that he did is when he wrote to Jessup, is he described essentially what became known as the Philadelphia experiment. And, the whole thing in 1943 where the USS Eldridge was physically moved from the U.S. East Coast into the Philadelphia port with huge, basically a Tesla-type experiment, essentially. So I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. It's just a fascinating piece of history, and maybe one day someone can make progress on that. But that's as far as I can get with it. Good question. Thanks, Scott. This is from Mark, who had 2 points. One was a UFO sighting he had, which he described in California. It's very interesting. He saw a cone of light. This is in 2016, walking his dog at 5 a.m., and the light goes up, and he can't see what's above it. There's more detail here. I thought it was quite interesting. And he reported it to New Fork and MUFON, so it's there. It's February of 2016. We can look that up. Main thing I just wanted to ask here was a question he just asks: why don't the ETs announce themselves? He says, I doubt that they are petty and controlled by emotions as we are. Maybe there's good reasons behind what they do and what they don't do. What do they know? He's just hoping that they're benevolent and acting with good intent, which we definitely hope that as well. The only thing that I thought was interesting was he says, I doubt that they are petty and controlled by emotions like we are, which we are emotional, but I'm kind of glad that we're emotional. And going through Dave Jacobs' Walking Among Us, which we're going through very, very closely these days. Notice folks in the chat room are talking about that, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you go into that research...
People are very taken by it. I mean, it's sort of a game changer if you start to think that that's a real possibility.
Well, and I mean, David's research, I think I've always deeply respected what he does. I think he's very careful. And the thing that you get in his research is that from a variety of individuals that he has regressed, men and women, they talk about these other beings and how the alien species are creating human-looking hybrids, he calls them. One thing that really comes through is like these hybrids have like zero social skills. I honestly wonder, like, how the hell would they be able to infiltrate and take over our world, because they are utterly incompetent in socialization. And they're actually afraid of us. They're afraid of our violent tendencies. We actually make them nervous.
I think it would be sort of like being an ethnographer. You would have to spend a lot of time observing and watching, and this is probably a phase 2, the interactions. You know, having people to teach them and bringing people aboard the ships and asking them. I mean, I found that part fascinating, asking them questions.
Things like, how do you eat an orange?
Without using an orange to demonstrate, so doing it all by verbal explanation.
Like if this is how they
as
are,
opposed to
then
experiential. That's the thing. They're really not getting that these things are experiential.
yeah, their mode of learning, like they don't appear to read either, like have written language. They it's telepathic communication. How that works is hard for me to understand, right? But um, in some ways it could be an advantage, but I think in a lot of ways it is actually a handicap. And I think it's preventing them from really getting us in any significant way. But my point is like they don't seem to have emotions, and they don't seem to have evil negative emotions, but they don't have the positive ones either. Like they would be very hard for us to relate to, seems to me.
I've heard some people describe it as all business. Just
Yeah,
all business.
that's it. And every now and then, David's abductees will say, like they get this strong impression that the insectolins, the guys at the top, almost look down on our emotions. In fact, they do. They think that it's just a distraction, a waste of time. Our culture is kind of a waste of time. They don't produce, at least they don't seem to produce art, literature, music. They don't do that. It's a bleak kind of existence. It's like where all of these hybrid variations are created for a purpose, and they just do their job. They rest a little bit, then they go back to their job, and it's like no free will. That's not an issue for them. It doesn't exist. It's like the worst kind of totalitarian society. But if everyone's telepathic, you wouldn't have privacy, would you? Like,
no.
Like this is the thing. Like some people think, let's ascend, let's achieve the next level of development, and we expand all of our telepathic capabilities. Like I wouldn't want that.
I don't think telepathic.
I think that would be
a telepathic society is a good idea. I know Kit wrote to me about that a long time ago. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you on that. But I know you're really exploring that idea of what a telepathic society would be like. And I think that's a fascinating thing to think about. And I don't think it would be good. And, I mean, we've been thinking about it as well in terms of the future of cognitive implants and AI, and whether there will be a neural net on top of our regular internet, where all of our minds are connected through a cloud, or those who have the cognitive implants. So where would your thoughts begin? Would you know which thoughts are yours or not?
Exactly.
And who's running things? And, it'd be this, I just can't imagine. So, telepathic society.
Total nightmare. Total nightmare. I almost missed a letter by Bent, a little note. Bent is another one of the really cool people who contributes. And he said thanks for talking as you did about the whole Corey Good copywriting thing. But then he just said here, he was just talking about people who don't want to talk about their experiences for fear of, social repercussions and stigma. And it just made me, I just want to say this, like, I hope you guys realize, like, when I come down on people who I think are fakers or liars, and I don't believe the Corey Good story. I've never believed it. But it doesn't mean that I don't believe all experiencers. I mean, quite the contrary. I try to be diligent about people that I think are faking almost explicitly, because I want those people who've had experiences to feel like, not to be kind of brought in and lumped in with these people who I think are charlatans and fakers who bring disrepute to the whole field. I would want nothing more than to help create a culture in which people who've had intense experiences can talk about what they've gone through without a fear of social stigma or ridicule. Like that's one of the most important things that I feel I could ever contribute to.
And I know we've said this before, but I'll just say it again very quickly. When that whole thing was prompted by something very specific that happened when Richard did that Fakers in the Field the Blue Man thing. And so you have to understand, Desta reached out to us, and this guy was using her name to sort of climb this celeb ladder inappropriately, and so that just enraged Richard, and that's where that came from. So his story, I guess you haven't heard the whole backstory to that, but it is pretty frustrating to hear what he did. And so it's not everyone.
Yeah.
And all of these experiences that are going on, that's the thing. There are so many people walking around with these incredible experiences, and we're not sharing them because of the ridicule, because of it doesn't make us feel good, right? We know it happened. It feels like it dilutes our experience when we tell other people. On the other hand, it's hard to walk around knowing that you've had these things happen to you, and who do you talk to?
Right.
But I will say a good start to get right with yourself is hypnosis. I will say that did help me. So,
yeah. Hey, before we wrap it up, there's one other kind of a fun thing that I want to read. But before I read that, I just want to acknowledge a few of you there that we are in personal communication with. So there's a few of you that we've been chatting with for the last few weeks and months. And I just want personally to say that we're remaining definitely interested in what you have to say. There's members of our group who have had some very powerful experiences with other groups of people that are out there. And I'm absolutely wanting to follow up and learn as much as possible about that. Recently, there was a gentleman who wrote about, and I don't want to be utterly specific here, but who had military UFO experiences that were related to me. And I just want to thank you. I wrote back to you, but I want to thank you here. And just suffice to say that militaries around the world are having incredible experiences with these objects that are so vastly beyond anything that we can put out there as far as anything that we know. So there's a lot happening here, and we've got a lot of amazing members of this group. Last question. Can I read this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Richard and Tracy. And then this is Mark, and he's writing to me. He says, I recently saw a picture of you and the late Jim Mars. He was holding a guitar, and it looked like maybe you had a harmonica. Do you play harp? If so, tongue blocker or lip purser? I came up with an alternate tuning I'd like you to try if you're a player. Well, Mark, I am a harmonica player.
In the last one we filmed for you, I was digging these out, but here we are.
Oh yeah, I couldn't find any of my harps, but I have a bunch. I'm not a great harmonica player, but I can play a little bit of blues harp. And
yeah, no good.
Totally average.
Very good.
I got into it many years ago, and I taught myself. But then I looked on YouTube. Like, there are guys who are like utterly transcendent harmonica players, like vastly beyond I'll ever. But I did go through a period where I learned classical music pieces for my harmonica, to wit. So there you go, a little bit of Beethoven on the harmonica. Who knew?
I love it.
Who knew?
So, lip purser or
I don't really know.
tongue blocker?
I don't think I do
Never
the
heard
tongue
of this
blocking. That's tongue block. I don't do that. So maybe I'm a lip purser. Is that? You'll have to explain to me. Not sure I really would know. Here's a funny thing. Many years ago, I was already a UFO author, but I also did a little thing on the side. There was some adult education classes in Rochester, and I taught like 3 or 4 classes for adult learners on how to play harmonica. Can you imagine the scene? Like, I walk into a little high school type classroom, and there's these maybe 10 people sitting in the little chairs, and we all have a harmonica, and I'm teaching them how to play. 2 hours. And I said, by the end of these 2 hours, you're going to be able to play. And I started them off with like A Hunting We Will Go. And by the end of it, we were learning basic blues chords. And
that's really cool.
I thought that'd be fun. Yeah, so a few
You've actually taught several really interesting courses.
What else have I taught?
You taught this. I love this. You taught this course of sort of people who break out in the second half of their life.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
I just love this.
Long time ago, locally.
I love this. I hope you do a lecture, even if you do it for members, on this. I love this.
I could do that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, years ago, I used to
Explain.
write professional resumes, and that was a big way of how I supported myself for a long time. So this lady came into my office, and she ran what was called an elder hostel program for a Catholic retreat house, actually in the town of Canandaigua, which is not far from Rochester. It's very beautiful there.
Starting to move around on my chair.
They called it the Notre Dame Retreat House. And so if you were 50 years or older, you could go there, and it's like a Catholic retreat. It's actually very beautiful. So she said, we always are offering courses. And I was like 33, 34 years old at the time. I was a young guy. She said, I really like the kind of things you talk about. We would love to have you do courses. And I'm like, what courses could I possibly do? I ended up doing a bunch of courses for them. I did a course on the early history of the church, early Christianity. I was really into that. I did a whole thing on that. I did a whole thing on the history of holidays. Like, that's some interesting stuff right there, because all the good holidays are pagan fertility festivals, basically. Easter to Christmas to all the others.
Yeah, tell them about the other one.
So then I did this. The last one I did was I called it something like Achievement After the Age of 50. And I went through historical examples of famous people who, like, if they had died at the age of 50, they would have been completely unknown. Like, you would have never heard about them. They did some of their greatest things, like, in their older years. One was the great composer, Franz Joseph Haydn, who, had he died at the age of 50, would probably not be remembered. But Papa Haydn was, really kicked into high gear in his 50s and 60s. He was amazing. A great mentor of Mozart and Beethoven, I believe. I think he actually taught Beethoven a little bit, but Beethoven wasn't much of a student. They didn't get along that well, but Haydn was amazing. One of my favorite popular historians was a guy named Will Durant, who I've got his multiple volumes of. I think it's called The Story of Civilization. I've read most of it, and he didn't complete his first volume of that until he was 50, and then he spent the rest of his life co-authoring most of them with his wife, Ariel. And it was a joint effort, and he did it into his 90s.
Wow.
Into his 90s. So, yeah, I did that, and I just thought it was a cool thing. Like,
I love that.
People, reinventing, like, getting their creative juices going well into their later years.
Well, Wayne Dyer talks about people making this grand shift from ambition being the biggest priority to meaning being the biggest priority. So perhaps this has something to do with, people working towards others' expectations of them in earlier life, and then they finally come around to themselves. Like, what do I really want? What do I want my legacy to be? How do I want to contribute in some way that's meaningful? I think there is that big shift. And that maybe has something to do with it. People really getting onto their own path.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I think it takes time a lot of times for us to find who we are.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen when you're in your 20s. When you're in your 20s, you've got the energy, you've got the passion, you think the certainty of whatever it is you're doing, and it is that ambition. And you can accomplish amazing things in your 20s and 30s.
And it's important to try lots of things too,
Yeah, without a doubt. But you do find yourself. Like, it takes time to find who you are, and to have that level of that type of wisdom. So that later part of life is where you can apply that, and like, for me, I'm at the point where, and we are really both at the point where, for me, I'm always like, I hear the clock ticking all the time. It's like constant tick-tock, and I don't want to waste any time. Like, I don't want to. So I don't have time to screw around on things that I don't consider important anymore, and I want to just do the things that are important to me.
Very cool.
And that's just how it is.
Do we finish the answering that person's question?
The harmonica question?
Was there anything after that? Or
He came up with an alternate tuning if I'd like to try.
no, was there something else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
That's everything.
Again, I can't remember. I don't think we said this in this video, so I'm going to say it now. The chat room. I always talk about this, but I love it. And, you don't have to go there and contribute. But there are a lot of cool people in there giving really great information. So I wish it could be more blown out for you like a forum, but right now we just aren't there yet. But people are dropping the coolest links, new shows that are out. I lost my little list here. I lost it. Where did you go? Lectures on AI that people thought were very powerful. There was another one with Alan Watts from 60 years ago discussing transhumanism and a lot of the concerns are around VR and these types of things. But there's very cool discussions. The David Jacobs discussion is going on in there.
Someone mentioned the show Altered Carbon, which we're actually watching.
Yeah, that's right. And
I want to go
the
through
Rochester
there.
members actually, Rochester meetup members suggested that to us.
Let's go through there. We should copy a lot of that stuff and actually maybe refer to that in the next answer forum.
Yeah, we can. That's something I would love to do. Also, there's someone also put links to Carla Turner's presentations, and I know Kit said you found an audiobook. So there's cool stuff. And people talking about their stories. I think Carolyn was in there talking about her stories as well, some of her experiences. So I just wanted to point that out. When you go there, you don't have to participate if you've never been in a chat room before. You can just go in and scroll and read it, and there's some good stuff.
All right, that's good to know. Well, we actually ended up doing practically another hour, so how about that?
I know.
This one will succeed.
Oh my gosh, all right. Hopefully this one saves.
We'll see you all again. I hope this was fun, and I think we'll be doing this on a fairly regular basis. I mean, the emails build up, and when they do, I think we'll just do answer forums periodically. We are doing a live AMA on November 1st. That's 7 o'clock Eastern time, and we'll do that the way we did the last one, which is a unlisted YouTube link.
Yes.
That'll take you to my YouTube page, our YouTube page, and just refresh the screen at that time, and we'll be on. It's a closed, just for members only, and we'll do a live AMA interaction with chat bar in there.
Yeah, so it's not going to be in the chat room anymore, but you can go to the chat room to get the link. And also when we do a post, we will put the link in it. It's going to be just like the Tuesday nights when we do a live stream. It's going to be on YouTube, but you're going to have a special link. And the chat will be that chat. So it's way easier. It works better. Yeah. I think everybody will like it better.
It'll be good.
There's just one other thing that we had talked about the first time we recorded this. We tried doing something new today, and it's called YouTube Premiere.
Oh, yes.
Right? So this is something unique. I just thought the members should know, just in case you don't know anything about this. We didn't a couple days ago. Basically, we take a video that Richard has recorded ahead of time, a pre-record, like we did Micah Hanks. It was an audio pre-record. It's like a movie premiere. So a watch page goes up. It announces the time. You sign up for a reminder of when it's going to go live. The main difference is because it's pre-recorded, Richard is in there chatting, and whoever, if they can make it as well, are in there doing the live chat because it's already recorded. So it's one of the only times that people will ever get to sort of chat live with Richard. He doesn't have to worry about broadcasting. So just thought you might like to know about that. We might send out an email broadcast to you guys the next time that happens, and you can try it out and let us know what you think. Also with the newsletter, if you guys have any suggestions, again, contact us tab. Use that to let us know how we're doing there. But
probably the best way to reach us is through writing to us at our.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, right. Takes me a while to learn.
And other than that, we're going to AlienCon soon. So
hope you enjoy, and wonderful getting to do this with you guys again. Yeah. See you November 1st when we do our live